Beautiful morning to you, our wonderful viewers and wonderful listeners out there. You're welcome to today's edition of the Newspaper Review, reaching you on your super darling station, OneTV network from here in Port Harcourt, Rivers State, Nigeria. I am your newspaper reviewer this day, Cephas Ibabuchi Ugochukwu, and it's another beautiful Thursday morning, of course, being the 19th day in the month of May 2022. The elections are fast approaching, especially the primaries. So what have we to serve with this lovely Thursday? But let's take a look from the national dailies to see that have in store for us, especially as it pertains to the elections that are fast approaching in the country. So we'll start with the Punch newspaper, and the Punch has some beautiful headlines for us this morning. On the topmost part of the Punch newspaper this morning, sorry for that delay right there. But then let's take a look from what we have from the Punch this morning. It is the newspaper review on your darling station, OneTV network here in Port Harcourt. Cephas Ugochukwu remains my name as we take you through the headlines of the papers this lovely Thursday morning. And we're starting right here with the Punch newspaper. The following headlines this morning. On the topmost part of the Punch, we have the headline that says, Jet A1, others may push flights above 100,000 naira according to domestic airlines. On page 21, you find that details of the story right there. And below that, we have 80 billion naira fraud. EFCC uncovers 17 properties linked to Accountant General. You find details of that on page 14 of the paper. And still on page 14, we have another headline that says 25 presidential aspirants filed submitted forms, says APC. And on page 7 of the Punch, we have a headline that says Anambra police warn against violence as court denies Kanu bail. Details, as I said, you find on page 7 of the paper. Coming down to the big story of today, we have APC governorship primaries. Tough battles in Oyo, Sokoto, Rivers, as 44,045 delegates elect candidates, with the riders Amechi Abe supremacy battle results in gunshot, chaos, factions trade words. Still on the rider, APC denies zoning presidency, shifts National Assembly, governorship primaries. On page 2, you'll find details of that story. Of course, I'm going to take a look on the new dates after take a look from all the headlines this morning. Okay, still on below the very big picture on the Punch this morning, we have Hausa community seeks reversal of Okada ban, promises Sawolu massive votes. And below that, we have Nigerians pay more for kerosene than petrol, according to a report. Details you find on page 22 of the Punch newspaper this morning. And still on Punch, hemp seller slits girlfriend's throat over slippers, dumps corpse. A very sad story there, but you get full details of that on page 4 and page 5 of the Punch newspaper. And beside that, we have 727 Nigerian doctors migrate to UK in 5 months. That's a very, very massive migration by our medical doctors. And one can rightly say because their welfare is not taken care of right here in the country. But we get full details of that on page 4 of the Punch newspaper this morning. Still on Punch, on the bottom page of the front cover pages, we have Oshun Court affirms Adeleke's candidacy. Babayemi to review judgment. On page 14, you find that story. Still on Punch is another sad story there, and it reads, 5-year-old pupil drowns during swimming lesson in Lagos. A very sad one there. You find on page 4 and page 5 of the Punch newspaper this morning. Still on Punch, of course, that's the last headline of review this morning. EFCC arrest ex-NDDC boss over 47 billion naira fraud. On page 7, you'll find full details of that story. Now, to the very big story on Punch newspaper this morning says no fewer than 44,045 delegates will on May 26 elect candidates in 28 states where governorship elections will take place next year. Now, the states where the primaries will hold include Lagos, Ogun, Oyo, Delta, Cross Rivers, Rivers State, Akwa Ibom, Kwara, Benue, Plateau, Niger, Nasarawa, Jigawa, Kaduna, Kano, Katsina, Kebbi State, Sokoto, Zamfara, Abia, Ebonyi, Enugu, Imo, Adamawa, Bauchi, Borno, Gombe, Taraba, and Yobe states. So these are the states where we expect the primary elections to take place, of course, on 26th of this month. And of course, we want to inform authoritatively as to what transpired yesterday during the National Working Committee meeting of the All Progressives Congress that the party have finally shifted the date for the primary election. Yes, the news said the National Working Committee of the All Progressives Congress on Wednesday, the 18th day of May 2022, approved an adjusted timetable and schedule of activities for the governorship, state House of Assembly, House of Representatives, Senate, and presidential primaries and appeals as follows. Governorship and House of Representatives primaries will now be held on Thursday, 26th of May, 2022. Senate and House of Assembly, Friday, 27th of May, 2022. For election appeals, governorship and House of Representatives, Friday, 27th of May, 2022, and then Senate and House of Assembly, Saturday, 28th of May, 2022. And also special convention for presidential primaries holds between Sunday the 29th to Monday the 30th of May, 2022. So those that are still in doubt of the calendar and schedule for APC, that is the rundown of what to expect from the APC as regards the primary elections. Now, away from Punch, we now go straight to Guardian newspaper with the following headlines this morning. On the top page of the Guardian this morning, which forms the major story right there, we have 2023 APC, PDP, a mind game over primaries, with the following riders. In fresh twist, APC adjusts timetable to hold primaries after PDPs. Says no truth in zoning presidency to Northeast. APC has no reason to zone presidency to North. Tinubu group kicks. Still on the rider, uncertainty in Buhari's cabinet as Malami, Talen attend FEC after farewell session. And finally, on that rider, we have Buhari to decide who stays, who goes, says Lai Mohammed. Of course, the one of that story started on the cover page and continues on page 6 of the Guardian newspaper. Still on Guardian, right there, we have some other headlines that reads, how influential politicians get away with corruption, according to Felana. You get that story on page 3 of the Guardian newspaper. Still on Guardian, no plan to ban Facebook over IPOB. Government clarifies. On page 4, you get details of that story. Court affirms Adeleke as Osun PDP Guba candidate. On page 5, you get details of that story. And on page 7, we have the story that reads, Court strikes out new charges against Kanu. Yes, yesterday there was a fresh new charges against Nnamdi Kanu, of which the court, presided over by Nyaku, struck out the 6 charges. Of course, get full details of what transpired right there in Abuja yesterday in the Guardian newspaper, and specifically on page 7 of that paper. Okay, moving on Guardian, we have bakers decry inability to pass rising production costs to consumers. Page 18, you get full details of that story. And if you take a very beautiful look on a Guardian, you see two very big pictures there, and it's showing us a deserted street. And of course, the story has it that the ever-busy Agbani Road deserted on compliance with the IPOB sit-at-home order in Enugu. You can see that how the road was fully deserted. You hardly find a human person walking on that road. And below that, you see another busy road, very much deserted, with another beautiful picture with the inscription, of course, the Omaya, the Abia Towers there. And it reads that a post office roundabout, Abia Road, Omaya, during the sit-at-home order in Abia State yesterday. And of course, it was a serious affair yesterday. Those that came from Owerri will tell you how it looked like yesterday with the sit-at-home order that was actually complied with as directed by the IPOB. But then the big story as we saw in the Guardian says that the countdown to the presidential primaries of the two major parties, talking about All Progressives Congress, APC, and the People's Democratic Party, PDP, is coming with all the thrills and the trappings of the now rested Game of Thrones series. Yes, I will have to see the battle come next week. We'll be seeing all the gladiators to find out who will stay and who will go as far as the primary elections are concerned. But then moving on from there, we'll go straight to the next paper off review this morning, and we are landing right away in this day newspaper with the following headlines. Yes, on the topmost part of this day, we have the headline that reads, returning ministers, Buhari to determine Silva Ngige talent's fate, says Mohammed. With the riders, declares FG has no plan to ban Facebook. Also on the rider, FEC okays 169.7 billion naira private sector investments in road infrastructure. Of course, the story started on the cover page and continues on page 48 of this day newspaper. Still on this day, as Nigeria struggles with growing commodity prices, UK's inflation hits 40-year high. Page 5, you get full details of that story. Still on this day, FG declines consent to Saplat mobile oil producing asset acquisition deal. The story started on the cover page as well and continues on page 51. Now, the big story with so many pictures displayed on the front page of this day. We have the story that says the 23 APC members seeking to replace Buhari. Who are they? Of course, you get full details of that on page 48. But if you take a closer look on the pictures you can find on this day this morning, you will see the pictures as displayed. You see the picture of Yemi Osibajo, Ahmed Lawan, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, Ibikunle Amonsun, Ogbonnaya Ono, Dave Omahi. We have also Chukwemeka Nwajoba, Yahaya Bello, Godswill Akpabio, Tunde Bakare, Kayode Fayemi. We also have Rotimi Amechi, Ken Nnamani, Abubakar Bashiru, Sani Yahaya, and of course Ben Ayade. These are 18 of the 23 aspirants who are jostling to replace President Muhammadu Buhari in Aso Rock. But you get full details of that story on page 38 of this day newspaper. And below those pictures there, which is of course the last headline of for review this morning, we have 2023 APC implosion imminent over move to keep presidency in North. Party chieftain warns. On page 8, you get full details of that story. And of course, the big story, as we have in these days, says that when all is said and done, after all the back and forth, the frenzy by both pretenders and contenders, only 23 aspirants are up for screening. Now, 24 actually returned their nomination forms, but Akiwumi Adesina put out of the race a few days ago, leaving these 23 members, of course, 22 men and 1 woman of the All Progressives Congress, to slot it out for the presidential ticket. And of course, and the question still remains, come next week, who will actually be the true flag bearer of the All Progressives Congress? That is the first step you have to take before claiming to retain power in the Aso Rock Villa. So APC cannot tell us they are retaining power unless after the race to tell us who will be flagging the flag come next week. But details of that, as I said, you find right there on this day, and you can read full details of all the aspirants on page 48 of this day newspaper. Okay, away from this, they will go straight to the Nation newspaper. And Nation newspaper has some beautiful headlines of a review this morning. On the topmost part of the Nation, where the headline that reads, Malami Ngige, silver, talent, soon to know fate. On page 4, you have details of that story. Remember, these are the ministers that were asked to resign and face their presidential ambition, of which they did, and now they said, no, we want to go back to a ministerial position and not going further with the presidential bid. Of course, at least 4 of them never resigned, but at least there was a kind of a farewell session that they bid the cabinet farewell to run their race. But finally, Malami Ngige, silver, talent have all returned back to their ministerial position. And of course, let us know if the president will admit them or not. But on page 4 of the Nation, I have full details of that comeback by these ministers. Okay, still on Nation, more endorsements for Tinubu in Kwara, Benue. Page 3, you have details of that story. Still on the top part of the Nation, again, Lagos restricts Okada operators in 6 councils. Still on that, we have an ongoing legal battle likely to delay Alaafin's selection. Page 27, you have details of that story. Remember what transpired in Lagos some days back, where the Okada riders impounded on an engineer, killed him, and set his body ablaze because of 100 naira. You can begin to imagine how crazy some of these operators can be. Because of 100 naira, an engineer was actually beaten to death and set ablaze by Okada riders in Lagos State. And that has been raising a lot of dust in that state. But details of that will read up on page 27 of the Nation newspaper. Now, still on Nation, below that we have a Ekiti 2022. PDP warns against rigging. And still on Ekiti 2022, reject PDP, SDP, Fayemi tells women. And finally, from Ekiti 2022, we have a Iniedo, campaigns against violence. On page 2, you get full details of that story on the Nation newspaper. And beside the big picture we have on the Nation this morning, we have the story that says, lockdown in Southeast states over Nnamdi Kanu, with the rider, Judge denies IPOB leader bail. In fact, it was a drama if you followed the story yesterday. So for some of us that saw some clips from that judge, from that court session yesterday, it was more of a mere conversation between the judge and Nnamdi Kanu yesterday. But then the story is that Nnamdi Kanu will be denied bail by the judge. But let's see what happens when the court will be sitting next week for the judgment again. But you have a very big picture there. And the picture we are seeing 2 men sitting before a lot of rifles, right? And with the caption that says, kidnap suspects of Greenfield University students and other rape suspects during their parade by the police in Abuja yesterday. A lot of rifles displayed before those men there. But you get full details of that story on page 4 of the Nation newspaper. Okay, to the big stories we have in the Nation this day, why APC changed dates for governorship other primaries. With the rider, election of presidential candidate May 29/30, and also party fears INEC sanctions. The story actually started on the front page of the paper and continues with analysis on page 4, with full analysis on page 27 of the Nation newspaper. So details of that you read up right there on those pages. Now below that big story we have a 47 billion naira probe. EFCC detains ex-NDDC MD Ekere. With the rider, minister suspends accountant general under probe for 80 billion naira fraud. And that is how funny Nigeria can be. You get details of that story from the 4th page and continues on page 4. Now that's looking. Government agent heads now being victims of fraud. Last time it was a former EFCC boss who was accused of looted items. And then today it is the accountant general being facing a fraud of to the tune of 80 billion naira. NDDC former boss still facing a probe of 47 billion naira and so many others like that. But details of that story read off from the cover page and continues on page 4 of the Nation newspaper. And then on the bottom page of the front page, you have a court clears Adeleke as PDP candidate. Five die in Abuja.